The penthouse shimmered, a glass and steel monument to my success. I surveyed the city lights, a tapestry of human ambition, and sipped my aged scotch. It was a ritual, this moment of quiet contemplation, a moment I usually shared with my wife, Vivian. Tonight, the silence was a heavy, unwelcome presence. We'd been together for a decade I'd believed was built on mutual respect and affection. A decade, I now knew, riddled with lies. Vivian had always been the picture of composure, a woman of refined tastes and understated elegance. Her presence was a calming balm, a counterpoint to the frenetic energy of my work. I'd built my tech empire, Apex Innovations, on calculated risks and unwavering focus. Vivian was my anchor, my constant, or so I thought. Tonight, however, the familiar comfort of our home felt like a gilded cage. I replayed the events of the past few weeks, the subtle shifts in Vivian's behavior, the almost imperceptible coolness in her touch. I'd initially dismissed them as stress, the pressures of her charity work, or perhaps a fleeting bout of melancholy. But the whispers had started, faint at first, then growing louder, more insistent. The source of those whispers was Thomas, my closest confidant, my business partner, the man I'd trusted implicitly. We'd been friends since our university days, shared dreams, and weathered countless storms together. He was the brother I never had, and now he was the architect of my undoing. The first hint came from a chance encounter with a mutual acquaintance, a woman with a penchant for gossip. She'd mentioned seeing Vivian and Thomas together, not at a gala or a business function, but at a secluded cafe, their demeanor suggesting a familiarity that went beyond mere friendship. I'd brushed it off, attributing it to idle chatter, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Then came the late nights, the unexplained absences, the evasive answers. Vivian's once open gaze now held a guardedness, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. I started paying closer attention, scrutinizing her every move, analyzing her every word. I installed discreet monitoring software on her phone and computer, a decision that felt both invasive and necessary. The evidence, when it arrived, was a cold, sharp blade. Text messages, emails, photos, a digital trail of betrayal, a chronicle of stolen moments and whispered promises. The intimacy of their exchanges was a brutal assault, a violation of the sanctity of my marriage. The words, once meant to convey affection and trust, now burned like acid, etching themselves into my memory. I poured myself another drink, the amber liquid a poor substitute for the warmth I craved. The city lights blurred, the once vibrant cityscape now a reflection of the chaos within me. My mind raced, a whirlwind of anger, disbelief, and a profound sense of loss. I felt like a character in a play, a pawn in a game I didn't understand. The question wasn't if I would retaliate, but how. My entire life had been built on control, on meticulous planning and calculated execution. I would not allow this betrayal to go unpunished. I would dismantle their lives, piece by piece, until they were left with nothing but the bitter taste of their own deceit. I would make them understand the true meaning of betrayal, the devastating consequences of their actions. This was not a matter of passion, but of cold, calculated justice. The glint of steel in my eyes reflected the plan forming in my mind. The days that followed were a masterclass in controlled composure. I moved through my routines with an almost robotic precision, maintaining the facade of a devoted husband and trusted friend. To the outside world, nothing had changed. Inside, however, a storm raged, a tempest of carefully contained fury. Vivian, perhaps sensing a shift in the atmosphere, became increasingly attentive, her attempts at affection now laced with a nervous energy. She'd linger a moment too long when she kissed me, her eyes searching mine for any sign of suspicion. Thomas, too, seemed to tread carefully, his jovial demeanor replaced with a forced lightness, a constant stream of empty pleasantries. I played along, a silent actor in their twisted drama. I listened to their fabricated stories, their clumsy attempts to cover their tracks, and I smiled, a cold, empty smile that concealed the icy resolve within. I studied them, observed their every interaction, their every glance, their every whispered word. I was a predator, patiently stalking my prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My business, Apex Innovations, became my sanctuary, a place where I could channel my rage into productive energy. I immersed myself in complex algorithms, intricate financial models, and strategic planning. I meticulously analyzed every aspect of my company, identifying vulnerabilities and strengthening my defenses. I was building a fortress, a bastion from which I would launch my counteroffensive. I began to subtly alter the dynamics of my relationships with both Vivian and Thomas. I increased my workload, spending more time at the office, creating a sense of distance. I canceled social engagements, citing pressing business matters, isolating them from our shared circle of friends. I introduced new projects, new ventures, requiring Thomas's undivided attention, subtly shifting his focus away from Vivian. I started to plant seeds of doubt, subtle suggestions that something was amiss. I'd mention a chance encounter with an old acquaintance who had seen them together, a casual remark about their close friendship, a knowing glance that lingered a moment too long. I never accused them directly, never revealed my knowledge of their affair. I simply let the insinuations hang in the air, allowing them to fester and grow. I also began a quiet, methodical dismantling of their public image. I subtly leaked information about Thomas's past business dealings, painting him as a shrewd and ruthless opportunist. I hinted at Vivian's extravagant spending habits, suggesting a lack of financial responsibility. I never lied, never fabricated evidence. I simply presented the truth in a way that cast them in the worst possible light. The effects were subtle at first, a slight chill in their interactions with others, a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. But as the whispers grew louder, the doubts began to take root. They started to question each other, to second-guess their actions, to see the shadows of suspicion in every interaction. I watched them, like a puppeteer manipulating his marionettes, as they danced to the tune I was playing. They were trapped in a web of their own making, a labyrinth of lies and deceit. And I, the architect of their downfall, was patiently waiting for them to lose their way. The cracks in their carefully constructed facade began to widen. Vivian, once a picture of serenity, now displayed a nervous restlessness. She'd jump at the slightest sound, her eyes darting around the room, as if expecting to find me lurking in the shadows. She'd cling to me at times, her touch almost desperate, then pull away abruptly, as if recoiling from the guilt that consumed her. Thomas, too, was showing signs of strain. His once confident demeanor had given way to a jittery unease. He'd stammer during presentations, his thoughts scattered and unfocused. He'd avoid my gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resentment. He was a man trapped, caught in the crosshairs of a game he couldn't possibly win. I continued to subtly manipulate their environment, tightening the screws, increasing the pressure. I'd schedule late-night meetings, forcing them to spend hours together, their forced proximity a constant reminder of their betrayal. I'd assign them joint projects, their collaboration now a source of tension and distrust. During these orchestrated encounters, I'd observe them closely, savoring their discomfort. I'd make casual remarks, seemingly innocuous comments that were loaded with hidden meaning. "It's interesting how things can change, isn't it?" I'd say, a faint smile playing on my lips. Or, "Trust is a fragile thing, easily broken." I'd murmur, my gaze fixed on Thomas. Their reactions were telling. Vivian would flinch, her eyes widening in alarm. Thomas would shift uncomfortably, his face flushing crimson. They knew I was toying with them, that I was aware of their deception. The knowledge was a constant, gnawing presence, eroding their confidence and fueling their paranoia. I began to isolate them further, subtly turning our mutual friends against them. I'd organize small gatherings, excluding them, allowing the gossip to spread like wildfire. I'd make veiled references to their unusual behavior, hinting at a hidden agenda. I never explicitly revealed their affair, but I painted a picture of two individuals who were not to be trusted. The social ostracization was subtle but effective. Vivian found herself increasingly excluded from her usual circles, her invitations dwindling. Thomas's business deals began to falter, his reputation tarnished by whispers of dishonesty and disloyalty. They were becoming pariahs, their once enviable lives crumbling around them. They were trapped in a self-made prison of suspicion and mistrust, their relationship now a toxic blend of guilt and resentment. The very thing that had brought them together was now tearing them apart. I watched their descent with a cold detachment, a sense of grim satisfaction. I was not driven by blind rage, but by a calculated desire for retribution. I wanted them to experience the pain they had inflicted upon me, to understand the devastating consequences of their betrayal. And I was just getting started. The noose was tightening, the strands of my carefully woven web drawing them closer to their inevitable demise. Their world, once a haven of luxury and privilege, was now a suffocating cage of suspicion and fear. Vivian's once vibrant social life had withered. Invitations to galas and charity events, once a staple of her calendar, had dwindled to a trickle. Her closest friends, once eager confidants, now kept their distance, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and judgment. The whispers had become a chorus, a constant hum of disapproval that followed her wherever she went. Thomas, too, was feeling the pressure. His once thriving business ventures were now plagued by setbacks and delays. Investors, once eager to partner with him, now hesitated, their trust eroded by the rumors circulating about his character. His reputation, once a shield, was now a liability, a mark of shame that clung to him like a shadow. Their isolation was complete. They had each other, of course, but their relationship, built on a foundation of deceit, was crumbling under the weight of their shared guilt. Their stolen moments, once a source of excitement, were now fraught with tension and paranoia. They were two prisoners chained together, their escape blocked by the walls of their own making. I continued to orchestrate their downfall, my actions becoming bolder, more deliberate. I planted false leads, suggesting that Vivian was having an affair with another man, fueling Thomas's jealousy and insecurity. I leaked confidential information about Thomas's business dealings to his competitors, undermining his credibility and sabotaging his projects. I watched their world unravel with a detached fascination, like a scientist observing a carefully controlled experiment. Their every move, their every reaction, was a testament to my power, a validation of my carefully crafted plan. I was the puppet master, pulling the strings, directing their descent into chaos. And yet, amidst the satisfaction, a flicker of something else began to stir within me, a sense of emptiness, a hollowness that gnawed at my soul. Was this what I truly wanted? Was this the justice I had sought? To destroy the lives of two people I had once cared for, to leave them broken and alone? The questions lingered, unanswered, a nagging doubt that threatened to undermine my resolve. But I pushed them aside, burying them deep within the recesses of my mind. I had come too far to turn back now. I had invested too much time, too much energy, too much of myself in this elaborate game of revenge. There was no turning back, no room for doubt. The final act was approaching, the climax of my carefully orchestrated plan. And as the pieces fell into place, I felt a surge of anticipation, a chilling sense of inevitability. The web was complete, the trap set, and Vivian and Thomas, blinded by their own deceit, were walking straight into it. The annual Apex Innovations Gala was upon us, a lavish affair held at our sprawling estate. It was a night of celebration, a chance to showcase our company's achievements and mingle with the elite of the tech world. This year, however, the gala held a different significance. It was to be the stage for my final act of revenge, the culmination of months of meticulous planning. I had invited Vivian and Thomas, of course, their presence essential to my grand finale. They arrived together, their faces etched with a strained smile, their eyes betraying the turmoil within. They moved through the crowd with a forced gaiety, their every interaction tinged with a palpable tension. I watched them from a distance, a predator savoring the anticipation of the kill. I had orchestrated every detail of the evening, ensuring that their downfall would be both public and spectacular. The guests, oblivious to the drama unfolding before them, were mere pawns in my elaborate game. As the evening progressed, I subtly steered the conversation, dropping hints, planting seeds of doubt. I'd casually mention Vivian's recent absences, her lack of involvement in the company's affairs. I'd allude to Thomas's questionable business practices, his tendency to cut corners. The whispers started again, spreading like wildfire through the crowd. The guests, their curiosity piqued, began to observe Vivian and Thomas with a newfound scrutiny. Their every move, their every word, was analyzed, dissected, and judged. Then, at the carefully chosen moment, I struck. I took the stage, the spotlight illuminating my figure, my voice amplified by the strategically placed microphones. I thanked the guests for their attendance, praised the company's achievements, and then, with a dramatic pause, I turned my attention to Vivian and Thomas. "I have a confession to make," I began, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. "I have been betrayed, deeply and profoundly betrayed, by the two people I trusted most in this world." A hush fell over the crowd, the air thick with anticipation. Vivian and Thomas froze, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear. They knew what was coming, the inevitable unveiling of their carefully guarded secret. "My wife, Vivian," I continued, my voice laced with a chilling calm, "has been having an affair with my business partner, Thomas." The words hung in the air, a bombshell detonating in the midst of the unsuspecting crowd. Gasps of shock and murmurs of disbelief rippled through the room. Vivian and Thomas stood frozen, their faces masks of horror, their bodies trembling with shame. I continued, my voice rising in intensity, detailing their clandestine meetings, their secret messages, their stolen moments. I presented evidence, irrefutable proof of their betrayal, their lies exposed for all to see. The guests, their initial shock giving way to a morbid fascination, watched the spectacle unfold before them. Vivian and Thomas, stripped bare of their carefully constructed facades, were now objects of pity and scorn. Their reputation, their social standing, their very lives, were crumbling before their eyes. I finished my speech, my voice dropping to a whisper, my gaze fixed on the two figures standing before me, their bodies slumped in defeat. "This," I said, "is the price of betrayal." The silence that followed my revelation was deafening. The guests, stunned into silence, exchanged uneasy glances, their faces a mixture of shock and morbid fascination. Vivian and Thomas, their carefully constructed world shattered, stood frozen in the spotlight, their shame exposed for all to see. Then, the whispers started, a low hum of disapproval that quickly escalated into a cacophony of condemnation. The guests, their initial shock giving way to righteous indignation, turned on Vivian and Thomas, their eyes filled with contempt and disgust. Vivian, once the darling of the social scene, now found herself ostracized, shunned by the very people who had once courted her favor. The whispers followed her, a constant reminder of her fall from grace. Her friends, once eager confidants, now avoided her gaze, their loyalty replaced with a mixture of pity and judgment. Thomas, too, faced the consequences of his actions. His business associates, once eager to partner with him, now distanced themselves, their trust shattered by his betrayal. Investors withdrew their support, projects stalled, and his once thriving career began to crumble. The fallout was swift and brutal. Vivian, unable to bear the weight of public shame, retreated into seclusion, her once vibrant life reduced to a solitary existence within the confines of our penthouse. Thomas, his reputation in tatters, found himself adrift, his career in ruins, his future uncertain. I watched their descent with a cold detachment, a sense of grim satisfaction. They had paid the price for their betrayal, their lives irrevocably altered by their actions. The web I had woven had ensnared them, their carefully constructed world collapsing around them. And yet, amidst the satisfaction, a nagging emptiness persisted. The victory felt hollow, the revenge bittersweet. Had I truly achieved what I had set out to do? Had I found solace in their suffering? The questions lingered, unanswered, a constant reminder of the complexities of human emotions. The line between justice and vengeance had blurred, the boundaries of morality obscured by the intensity of my pain. I had exposed their betrayal, shattered their illusions, and destroyed their lives. But in doing so, I had also exposed a darkness within myself, a capacity for cruelty that I had never known existed. The gala, once a symbol of our success, was now a haunting reminder of our collective downfall. The echoes of their shame lingered in the air, a testament to the destructive power of betrayal. And as the guests departed, their faces etched with a mixture of shock and disapproval, I was left alone, surrounded by the remnants of a life that had been irrevocably shattered. The dust settled, the echoes of the gala faded, and a chilling silence descended upon our once vibrant home. Vivian remained secluded in her room, a ghost haunting the halls of our penthouse. Meals were left untouched, phone calls went unanswered, and the only evidence of her existence was the faint sound of weeping that occasionally drifted through the closed doors. Thomas, stripped of his position at Apex Innovations and shunned by our social circle, had vanished. Rumors circulated about his whereabouts, a secluded cabin in the mountains, a desperate attempt to rebuild his life in a foreign country, even whispers of a complete mental breakdown. Whatever the truth, his absence was a constant reminder of the wreckage left in the wake of their affair. I moved through the motions of my life, attending meetings, overseeing projects, maintaining the facade of the successful entrepreneur. But the victory felt hollow, the satisfaction fleeting. The emptiness within me grew, a vast chasm that threatened to swallow me whole. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Nights were spent staring at the city lights, replaying the events of the past months, questioning the choices I had made. Had I gone too far? Had my pursuit of revenge blinded me to the consequences, the collateral damage inflicted on innocent lives? The faces of our friends and colleagues haunted my dreams, their expressions a mixture of pity and disapproval. I saw the pain in Vivian's eyes, the despair in Thomas's posture, and I felt a pang of guilt, a flicker of remorse that I desperately tried to suppress. The company, once a source of pride and accomplishment, now felt like a burden, a constant reminder of the betrayal that had shattered our lives. The board members, once deferential and supportive, now eyed me with suspicion, their trust eroded by the scandal. I found myself increasingly isolated, surrounded by people yet utterly alone. The joy had been drained from my work, the passion replaced by a weary sense of obligation. The empire I had built, the success I had achieved, now seemed meaningless, a hollow testament to my ambition. The silence in our home was oppressive, a constant reminder of Vivian's absence. I wandered through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing in the stillness, the ghosts of our past whispering in my ears. The laughter, the conversations, the shared moments of intimacy, all gone, replaced by a chilling emptiness. I tried to reach out to Vivian, to offer a semblance of comfort, but my words felt hollow, my gestures insincere. The damage had been done, the trust irrevocably broken. The chasm between us was too wide, the wounds too deep to heal. The victory I had sought had turned to ashes in my mouth, the revenge a bitter pill that I was forced to swallow. I had won the battle, but at what cost? The emptiness within me grew, a constant reminder of the price I had paid for my vengeance. The days blurred into weeks, the weeks into months. The initial shock of the gala had subsided, replaced by a dull ache, a constant reminder of the irrevocable changes to my life. The company, though still successful, had lost its luster. The scandal had tarnished its image, and the whispers persisted, casting a shadow over our every achievement. My nights remained sleepless, haunted by a recurring dream. I would find myself standing in the ruins of our penthouse, the once gleaming glass and steel now shattered and broken. Vivian would be there, her face pale and drawn, her eyes filled with an accusation I couldn't decipher. Thomas would appear, his figure shrouded in shadows, his voice a mocking whisper that echoed through the emptiness. I sought solace in my work, burying myself in the complexities of algorithms and financial models. But the passion was gone, replaced by a mechanical routine, a desperate attempt to fill the void within me. The success that had once fueled my ambition now felt like a hollow achievement, a trophy tarnished by the events of the past. One evening, as I sat alone in my office, staring at the city lights, a thought struck me, a seed of doubt that quickly took root. Had I been too quick to judge? Had I allowed my anger and hurt to cloud my judgment, leading me to a conclusion that was not entirely accurate? I replayed the events leading up to the gala, scrutinizing every detail, every conversation, every interaction. I recalled Vivian's nervous demeanor, her attempts to rekindle our intimacy, her whispered apologies that I had dismissed as insincere. I remembered Thomas's unease, his forced laughter, his attempts to avoid my gaze. A new possibility emerged, a scenario that had never occurred to me before. What if Vivian and Thomas were not having an affair? What if their relationship was something else entirely, something more complex, more nuanced than I had initially perceived? The thought was both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it meant that I had been wrong, that I had destroyed the lives of two people I cared for based on a misinterpretation, a misunderstanding fueled by my own insecurities and fears. Liberating because it offered a glimmer of hope, a chance to redeem myself, to salvage what remained of our shattered lives. I began to investigate, discreetly at first, then with increasing urgency. I reviewed the evidence I had gathered, the text messages, the emails, the photographs. I analyzed their interactions, their body language, their tone of voice. I searched for clues, for any indication that my initial assessment had been flawed. The more I delved, the more uncertain I became. The evidence, once so clear-cut, now seemed ambiguous, open to interpretation. The text messages could be read as expressions of friendship, the emails as collaborative efforts, the photographs as innocent moments captured out of context. Doubt gnawed at me, a persistent whisper that threatened to undermine the foundations of my carefully constructed reality. Had I been deceived? Had I been manipulated by forces beyond my comprehension? Or was this simply a desperate attempt to rationalize my actions, to absolve myself of the guilt that consumed me? The questions lingered, unanswered, a torment that consumed my every waking moment. The truth, elusive and enigmatic, remained hidden, shrouded in a veil of uncertainty. And as I searched for answers, I realized that the journey to redemption was far more arduous than the path to revenge. The seed of doubt, once planted, grew with alarming speed. It twisted its roots around my heart, choking the last vestiges of certainty and leaving me gasping for air in a sea of uncertainty. I intensified my investigation, driven by a desperate need to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I hired a new team of investigators, professionals with a reputation for discretion and thoroughness. They delved into Vivian and Thomas's past, uncovering hidden connections, secret meetings, and a web of relationships that extended far beyond the confines of our social circle. The picture that emerged was complex and disturbing. It seemed that Vivian and Thomas had indeed been meeting in secret, but their clandestine encounters were not those of lovers. Instead, they were conspirators, bound together by a shared agenda that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with power and control. The evidence pointed to a carefully orchestrated scheme, a plan to undermine my authority, seize control of Apex Innovations, and ultimately to destroy me. They had used their affair as a smokescreen, a distraction to divert my attention while they plotted their takeover. The text messages, once interpreted as declarations of love, now revealed themselves as coded communications, discussing financial transactions, strategic maneuvers, and the manipulation of key personnel within the company. The emails, once seen as evidence of their intimacy, were in fact detailed reports on my activities, my vulnerabilities, and my weaknesses. The photographs, once so damning, now appeared staged, carefully crafted to create the illusion of an affair. The intimate moments, the stolen glances, the whispered conversations, all part of a carefully constructed facade, designed to deceive and mislead. The realization hit me like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left me reeling. I had been played, manipulated, and outmaneuvered by the two people I had trusted most. They had used my love for them, my loyalty to our friendship, as weapons against me. The anger returned, hotter and fiercer than before. But this time, it was not directed solely at Vivian and Thomas. It was directed at myself, at my own blindness, my own naivete. I had allowed myself to be deceived, blinded by my emotions, and now I was paying the price. The emptiness within me transformed, the hollow ache replaced by a burning rage, a thirst for vengeance that consumed my every thought. I would not allow them to get away with this. I would expose their treachery, dismantle their scheme, and reclaim what was rightfully mine. The game had changed, the stakes raised. This was no longer about a broken heart, a wounded ego. This was about survival, about protecting everything I had worked for, everything I had built. And I would not rest until justice was served. The revelation of Vivian and Thomas's true motives ignited a fire within me, a cold, calculating fury that fueled my every action. I would not be a victim. I would not allow them to destroy me. I would fight back with every weapon at my disposal. My first move was to secure my position within Apex Innovations. I called an emergency board meeting, presenting them with irrefutable evidence of Vivian and Thomas's treachery. The board, initially skeptical, was swayed by the sheer volume of information I presented. Financial records, intercepted communications, and testimonies from key employees who had been approached by the conspirators. Vivian and Thomas were swiftly removed from their positions, their access to company resources revoked. Their carefully laid plans were disrupted, their network of collaborators dismantled. The company, once teetering on the brink of a hostile takeover, was now firmly back under my control. But my counteroffensive extended far beyond the boardroom. I launched a series of legal challenges, targeting Vivian and Thomas's personal assets, freezing their accounts, and exposing their illicit activities to the authorities. I leaked information to the press, carefully curated to paint them as ruthless opportunists, motivated by greed and ambition. The public, once sympathetic to their plight, now turned against them, their condemnation swift and merciless. Vivian, once a celebrated philanthropist, was now branded a fraud, her reputation tarnished beyond repair. Thomas, once a respected businessman, was now seen as a pariah, his name synonymous with deceit and betrayal. Their carefully constructed world crumbled around them, their social standing, their financial security, their very identities, stripped away. They were left with nothing but the bitter taste of their own ambition, the consequences of their misguided choices. And yet, my thirst for vengeance was not quenched. I wanted more than just their downfall. I wanted them to understand the pain they had inflicted, the devastation they had caused. I wanted them to experience the same isolation, the same despair, the same emptiness that I had endured. I began a campaign of psychological warfare, designed to break their spirits, to shatter their resolve. I sent them anonymous messages, reminding them of their failures, their betrayals, their impending doom. I planted rumors, suggesting that they were turning on each other, that their alliance was crumbling under the weight of their shared guilt. I watched them from afar, observing their descent into paranoia and despair. Their once confident demeanor was replaced by a haunted look, their eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. They were trapped in a nightmare of their own making, a labyrinth of suspicion and mistrust from which there was no escape. My revenge was taking shape, a masterpiece of calculated cruelty, a testament to my unwavering resolve. I would not rest until they were broken, until they had paid the ultimate price for their treachery. The walls were closing in on Vivian and Thomas, the consequences of their actions suffocating them like a poisonous gas. They had become pariahs, ostracized by society, abandoned by their friends, and haunted by the specter of their own misdeeds. Vivian, once a social butterfly, now retreated further into the confines of our penthouse, her world shrinking with each passing day. The staff, once eager to cater to her every whim, now moved about with a hushed reverence, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and fear. The silence in the apartment was deafening, broken only by the occasional muffled sob that escaped from behind her bedroom door. She tried to reach out to her former friends, but her calls went unanswered, her messages ignored. The invitations to charity events and social gatherings ceased, replaced by a cold silence that spoke volumes. The woman who had once commanded attention wherever she went was now invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of a world that no longer welcomed her. Thomas, stripped of his wealth and status, found himself adrift in a sea of uncertainty. His attempts to rebuild his career were met with scorn and rejection. Potential investors, once eager to court his favor, now recoiled at the mention of his name. The doors that had once swung open with ease now remained firmly closed, his reputation a barrier he could not overcome. He sought refuge in cheap motels and seedy bars, his once impeccable appearance replaced by a disheveled look of desperation. The man who had once exuded confidence and charm now moved with a hunched posture, his eyes darting nervously, as if expecting to be recognized and condemned at any moment. Their isolation was complete, their world reduced to a suffocating prison of their own making. They had each other, of course, but their relationship, built on a foundation of deceit and ambition, was crumbling under the weight of their shared guilt and despair. The stolen moments, once a source of excitement and intrigue, were now filled with recriminations and accusations. The trust that had once bound them together was shattered, replaced by a gnawing suspicion that each was plotting against the other. I watched their descent with a detached satisfaction, my heart hardened by the knowledge of their treachery. Their suffering was a balm to my wounded soul, a validation of my carefully orchestrated revenge. And yet, a flicker of doubt remained, a nagging question that whispered in the back of my mind. Was this truly what I wanted? Was their pain, their despair, enough to compensate for the emptiness within me, the hollowness that gnawed at my core? The answer, elusive and enigmatic, remained hidden, shrouded in the shadows of my own conflicted emotions. I had set in motion a chain of events that could not be reversed, a path of destruction that led to an uncertain destination. And as I watched Vivian and Thomas crumble, I wondered if I, too, was destined to be consumed by the flames of my own vengeance. The weight of my revenge pressed down on me, a heavy burden that threatened to crush me under its immense weight. I had achieved my goal, dismantling Vivian and Thomas's lives, leaving them broken and isolated. But the victory felt hollow, the satisfaction fleeting. The emptiness within me remained, a constant reminder of the price I had paid for my vengeance. I found myself increasingly drawn to the window of my office, staring out at the city lights, a vast expanse of human ambition and desire. I wondered if any of those millions of souls had ever experienced the same level of betrayal, the same consuming rage, the same chilling satisfaction of revenge. The questions lingered, unanswered, a constant torment that eroded my soul. Had I crossed a line? Had my pursuit of justice transformed me into something monstrous, a creature consumed by darkness? I tried to find solace in my work, but the passion was gone, replaced by a mechanical routine, a desperate attempt to distract myself from the gnawing guilt that consumed me. The company, once a source of pride and accomplishment, now felt like a prison, a constant reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my life. One evening, I found myself standing outside Vivian's door, my hand hovering over the handle. I hadn't seen her in weeks, hadn't spoken to her since the night of the gala. A part of me longed to reach out, to offer a semblance of comfort, to try to salvage what remained of our shattered relationship. But the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, it was all still there, a wall that separated us, a chasm too wide to bridge. I hesitated for a moment, then turned away, my heart heavy with regret. The damage had been done, the wounds too deep to heal. We were strangers now, bound together by a shared history, a shared pain, but separated by a gulf of mistrust and resentment. The news of Thomas's fate reached me through a cryptic message from one of my investigators. He had disappeared, leaving behind no trace, no explanation. Some whispered of suicide, others of a desperate attempt to start a new life under a new identity. Whatever the truth, his absence was a chilling reminder of the destructive power of my revenge. I had destroyed them, both of them. I had achieved my goal, but at what cost? Had I found peace? Had I found closure? Or had I simply traded one form of suffering for another? The questions lingered, unanswered, echoing in the silence of my empty life. The price of revenge, I had learned, was far steeper than I had ever imagined. And as I stared out at the city lights, I wondered if I would ever be able to escape the shadows of my own making. The weight of my actions pressed down on me, a crushing burden that threatened to suffocate me. I had achieved my revenge, but the victory felt hollow, the satisfaction fleeting. The emptiness within me remained, a constant reminder of the price I had paid for my vengeance. One morning, I found myself drawn to Vivian's room. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear the faint sound of music. Hesitantly, I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was bathed in soft sunlight, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped it for so long. Vivian was sitting by the window, her back to me, listening to a classical piece. Her hair, once meticulously styled, was now loose and flowing, framing her face in a way that reminded me of the woman I had first fallen in love with. I stood there for a moment, unseen, observing her. She seemed lost in the music, her expression a mixture of sadness and serenity. I had a sudden urge to turn and leave, to retreat back into the safety of my solitude. But something held me back, a flicker of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, there was still a chance for redemption. I cleared my throat, and Vivian turned, her eyes widening in surprise. For a moment, we simply stared at each other, the silence stretching between us like a fragile thread. I wanted to apologize, I finally managed to say, my voice trembling slightly, for everything. Vivian's expression remained unreadable. She didn't speak, didn't move. She simply looked at me, her eyes searching mine, as if trying to discern the sincerity of my words. I was blinded by anger, by hurt. I continued, my voice gaining strength. I allowed my desire for revenge to consume me. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. Tears welled up in Vivian's eyes, and she slowly nodded. I know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. We both did. We talked for hours that day, a raw and painful conversation that laid bare our shared pain, our mutual regrets. We spoke of the past, of the love that had once bound us together, and of the betrayal that had torn us apart. We spoke of the future, of the possibility of forgiveness, of the long and arduous road to healing. It was a start, a small step on a long and uncertain path. But as I left Vivian's room that evening, I felt a glimmer of hope, a faint light in the darkness that had enveloped my soul. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for me to find peace, to find redemption, to find my way back from the brink of despair. The days that followed were a testament to the slow and arduous nature of healing. Vivian and I began to rebuild our relationship, brick by painful brick. It was a fragile process, fraught with setbacks and moments of doubt. The scars of betrayal ran deep, and the wounds were slow to mend. We started with small gestures, shared meals, quiet conversations, walks in the garden. We avoided the topic of Thomas, a silent agreement that his absence would remain a ghost haunting the edges of our lives. We focused instead on the present, on the possibility of a future, however uncertain. I spent hours with Vivian, listening to her, trying to understand her pain, her regrets, her hopes. I learned about her own struggles, her feelings of isolation and loneliness, the circumstances that had led her down the path of deception. I began to see her not as a villain, but as a flawed human being, capable of both great love and great mistakes. Vivian, in turn, listened to my own confessions, my own regrets, my own struggles with guilt and remorse. She saw the pain in my eyes, the burden of my revenge, the emptiness that had consumed me. She offered me forgiveness not easily given, but freely offered nonetheless. The process was not linear. There were moments of anger, moments of resentment, moments when the past threatened to overwhelm us. But we persevered, driven by a shared desire to find peace, to find redemption, to find our way back to each other. We sought professional help, engaging in couples therapy, exploring the underlying issues that had contributed to our downfall. We learned to communicate more effectively, to express our emotions openly and honestly, to forgive each other for the mistakes we had made. Slowly, gradually, the wounds began to heal. The anger subsided, replaced by a tentative understanding. The resentment faded, replaced by a fragile trust. The emptiness within me began to fill, not with the joy of the past, but with a quiet sense of hope for the future. The path to forgiveness was long and arduous, but it was a path we were determined to follow. We had learned a painful lesson, a lesson about the destructive power of betrayal, the corrosive nature of revenge, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. And as we walked that path together, hand in hand, we knew that we had a chance to rebuild our lives, to rebuild our relationship, to find our way back to love. The scars of the past remained, a permanent reminder of the pain and betrayal we had endured. But they were no longer gaping wounds. They had become faded lines, a testament to our resilience, our ability to heal, and our capacity for forgiveness. Vivian and I had rebuilt our relationship, not into a replica of what it had once been, but into something new, something stronger, something forged in the fires of adversity. The trust that had been shattered was slowly, painstakingly, being pieced back together, stronger and more resilient than before. We had learned to communicate openly and honestly, to share our vulnerabilities, and to support each other through the inevitable challenges that life would throw our way. The emptiness within me had been replaced, not by the exuberant joy of the past, but by a quiet sense of peace, a profound appreciation for the simple things in life. A shared meal, a quiet evening by the fire, a walk in the garden hand in hand. I had learned that true happiness wasn't found in wealth or success, but in connection, in love, and in the ability to forgive. I never learned what truly became of Thomas. He remained a ghost in our lives, a cautionary tale of ambition and betrayal, but his absence no longer haunted me. I had made peace with the past, and I was focused on the future. Apex Innovations continued to thrive, but my priorities had shifted. I was no longer driven by the relentless pursuit of success, but by a desire to use my resources to make a positive impact on the world. I established a foundation, funding research into mental health and supporting victims of betrayal. I had learned that true fulfillment came not from accumulating wealth, but from giving back, from helping others heal and find their own path to forgiveness. Vivian and I found new passions, volunteering our time at a local shelter, working to support families in need. We rediscovered our love for travel, exploring new cultures, and immersing ourselves in the beauty of the world. We laughed again, we loved again, and we found joy in the simple act of being together. Our story was not a fairy tale. It was a story of pain and betrayal, of loss and regret. But it was also a story of resilience, of forgiveness, and of the enduring power of love. We had learned that even from the deepest darkness, a new beginning was possible. We had found our way back to each other, not as the people we had once been, but as stronger, wiser, and more compassionate versions of ourselves. And as we looked out at the city lights, hand in hand, we knew that our future, though uncertain, was filled with hope.